Amen. All right, so as we kind of come into the new year, it may be obvious to you, but people look at the new year differently. And there's basically two groups of people, or two ways of looking at this, okay? There are realists and there are dreamers. Realists and dreamers, and you know who you are, right? We know how this works. But we look at this, and you know what happens with realists and dreamers? They often marry one another. And then it gets really interesting, right? There's some tension that happens in that relationship. But it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really healthy thing, a really good thing. Creates an interesting dynamic. But here's how dreamers look at the new year. I mean, they look at it, it's all about what can be. It's all about, we're going to do this, and it's going to be amazing, and things that we've never done before we're going to do, and we're going to accomplish more than we've ever accomplished before. It's going to be a fantastic 2020. And the realist, they just simply say, well, you said the same thing last year. You know, that's what we said last year. You know, for a dreamer, the dreamer's favorite word is wow. I was like, man, wow. Man, 2020, it's going to be just wow. It's going to be that good. You know, where a realist, their favorite word is how. Like, how are we going to do that? How are we going to accomplish this? There's nothing right or wrong about the difference, but we need to acknowledge that we do view the world differently. Now, whether you're a dreamer or a realist, my hope today is to bring us all together and to view this coming year through the same lens. To look at this coming year in a similar way, because I believe that if we look through this lens, and let's call the lens possibility, if we can look through this lens of possibility, we're going to create the space necessary for change to germinate, because that's what we want. We'll create the space necessary for change to actually take root in our lives. If we look through the lens of what is possible. Now, realists, let me talk to you for just a second and tell you why this is so important. Because realists, you guys carry a lot of power. All right? You have a lot of power. And I just want you to know that the dreamers in the room, they appreciate you. They might not always say it, but they appreciate your pushback. They even appreciate your questions. But you need to be really, really careful. Because realists, you oftentimes, when you're asking those questions, when you're pushing into the dreamer, you squash the dreamer when you're really just questioning the dream. You need to be careful not to squash the dreamer. You need to be careful that you don't transition from being a realist to being a pessimist. All right, because I just want to clue you in. Nobody wants a pessimist at the party. Pessimist never gets invited to the party. You know, that person who's like, oh, this is a bad idea. Oh, I don't think we should do that. Oh, this is going to turn out really bad. No, don't go that direction. Don't go that. We need realists. Being a realist is good. Asking questions is good. Asking for a plan is good. But be careful. Be careful that you don't squash the dreamer as you're questioning the dream. Be careful that you don't transition from being a realist to being a pessimist, from someone who tears down rather than builds up. All right, now dreamers, I've got something for you too. It's okay to dream. It's actually really important to dream. Dreams are why we get from where we are to where we want to be. But you need to know it's not okay. It's not okay to leave the dream as an ambiguous possibility. Like, I don't know how we're getting there, but isn't this good to talk about? Because you drive realists crazy with that. And so you need to come with some semblance of a plan. Maybe just one or two steps of how you think we might get from where we are to where we're going to, where you want to get to, your preferred future, the dream. Dreamers, you need to have a plan. You don't have to have the whole plan, but bring something to the table. See, in the way that we do this together, I believe, is that we leverage this power of possibility. And here's why possibility is so important. Because possibility fuels the potential for a better future. Possibility fuels the potential for a better year, for a better you. I want you to think about this with me. I mean, really focus in on this. Because if you think about how we as a culture, we as a people have ever broken through anything, how we've made major strides, really big ideas becoming reality, whether it's in business or in culture or in organizations. If we whittle this thing down and we try to find the origin, typically it's a person or a group of people who thought for just maybe a moment that this is possible. This is possible. They believed that something different could happen. That's where it starts. It always starts there. When that small group of people, when they looked through that same lens and they concluded, you know what? We can do this. This is possible. We can make the change. And it pours fuel on the fire of potential for what they're called to do. But the opposite is also true. Right? If you don't believe it's possible, you're right on the money. You're right on the money. You're correct. See that kind of thinking, it's like pouring water on a tiny fire, on a little spark. It just puts it out. If you don't believe it's possible, you're right. So whether you believe in the possible or you don't, you're going to move in that direction. It's your choice. So how do you want to live this year? How do you want to live? Whether you're a dreamer or a realist, my challenge for you today is for us together to come and to look at this new year through the same lens, through this lens of possibility. And let me give you an example of two guys who looked through the lens of possibility. These two guys right here, they might be familiar faces to you, maybe not. But these guys, whether you know it or not, have had a huge impact on your life, directly and indirectly. This is Wilbur and Orville Wright, the Wright brothers. Right? And these guys are credited with inventing personed flight. Right? We can fly in planes because of these two guys. Now, what I'm going to say next might be a little unsettling. It might cause you to question the next time you get into a plane, because these two guys had no business figuring out how to fly. Right? They had no technical training at all. In fact, they were bicycle shop owners. That was their main gig. That's what they did. They owned a bicycle shop. And in their spare time, they liked to watch birds and to sketch birds. That's what they did. And then one day, one of the guys turned to the other brother and said, you know what, I think it's possible for us to use the principles and the dynamics of how birds fly so that maybe we can fly and people can fly. And so if you've ever flown in a plane, regardless of what kind of plane it is, you can trace it right back to these two gentlemen who believed in the power of possibility. What do you think is possible? In David McCullough's amazing book, The Wright Brothers, he writes this about the fact that these guys had no business figuring this out. He said, and I love this, he said, in no way did any of this discourage or deter Wilbur and Orville Wright, any more than the fact that they had no college education, no formal technical training, no experience working with anyone other than themselves, no friends in high places, no financial backers, no government subsidies, and little money of their own, or the entirely real possibility that at some point they could be killed. And they still did it. They went after it. They jumped in. In fact, the United States government paid a gentleman named Samuel Langley $70,000 to figure out human flight. He failed. The Wright brothers figured it out for less than $1,000. That's the power of possibility. If you don't believe it's possible, you're correct. You're correct. But possibility can fuel the potential for a better future. It can fuel the potential for a better year. It can fuel the potential for a better you. What do you think is possible? So what do we do with this idea of possibility? Well, let me be real practical with you. And just for a moment, let me talk to the marketplace leaders in our group right here. And maybe it's business, maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's the school system, maybe you lead a team somewhere in your organization. Let me just talk to you. So this coming week is the first full week of the business year, right? And maybe you've got a team, and here's what I'd encourage you to do. I would encourage you to gather that team together and talk about seeing your business or your organization through this lens of possibility. And here's what I encourage you to talk with them about. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's sometime early this next week. I think you should say, hey, this year in business, we're going to own a space in the land of possibility. We're going to own a space in the land of possibility. And then we're going to lease space in the land of reality. In other words, what we want to do in our business this year is we're going to live in this land called possibility, and then we want to visit this land of reality. Now what I'm not saying is discard reality. No, we need to pay attention to what's going on, the dynamics of our surroundings. But as a leader, we cannot allow reality to define us. As a leader, you define reality for your people and for your organization. You see, businesses that break through, organizations that break through, churches that break through, they live and own space in the land of possibility, and they visit or lease space in the land of reality. They ask what's possible. And that's not just true with an organization. That's true with you. That's true in your personal life as well. Own space in the land of possibility. Visit space in the land of reality. Here's how to make this actionable. All right? This is simple, but something we don't often do or spend time around, is we ask a simple question, and this is the question. What do you think is possible for you in this new year? Think about that question. What do you think is possible for you in the new year? I mean, do you think it's possible for you to secure your financial future? Do you think it's possible for you to take steps to become more financially secure or financially healthy? Do you think that's possible? And if you do, then what are those steps that you're going to take to realize that? Just baby steps, little things that we do that create the possibility for big change. And if that's you, I'm just going to shameless plug here. If that's you, then you need to sign up for Financial Peace University. And just do it. You can do it right now. Go online, sign up, go on our website. There's a link there. Take those steps. Now is the time. Do you think it's possible for you? If you do, then you've taken a step forward. If you don't think it's possible, all right, you're correct, because you're not going to move. Well, what do you think is possible in your marriage? I mean, do you think it's possible for you to love your spouse more tomorrow than you did today? Do you think it's possible for you to care better, for you to be more attentive? Do you think it's possible to give more of yourself? What are the steps that you need to do, that you need to take? Do you think it's possible? How about your emotional life? How about your spiritual life? Do you think it's possible for you to grow and to change in these areas? What do you think is possible for you in this next year? And whether you're a dreamer or a realist, if you can begin to answer these questions, it will change the year to come. Now we could spend a lot of time talking about this, and I think it would be important to do so, but we're not going to do that, because I actually think that there's a more important question for us to address. This is like the question. And I can't overemphasize this question. I can't make it big enough. But I believe that if we pay attention to this question, and actually the answer that we get to this question, and we live in it for the next year, that as we look back on this year, we will see an incredible change in our life. I believe the answer to this question, and us paying attention to it, can change the trajectory of the year ahead. And so here's that question. What does God think is possible for you in the year ahead? What does God think is possible for you in the year ahead. Now, don't miss this, all right? You need to catch what really is being said with this question, because what we're saying here with the question is that the creator of the universe thinks that something is possible for you. The creator of the universe thinks that something is possible for you. And so you need to personalize this, right? And so this is about Margaret. What does God think is possible for you in this year? It's Amanda. What does God think is possible for Amanda in this year ahead? We need to spend time on this question, ruminate on this question. Because here's the thing, if you're here today and maybe you're thinking, all right, Michael, I appreciate the conversation about possibility. I need to hear that in my life. But you're saying, you know what, but the question that you just asked, the whole God thing, that doesn't really apply to me because I'm not sure where I am with God. And I'm not sure where He is with me. I want you to know I understand where you are. I get that. And let me just say that I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm excited. I mean, the fact that you would say, you know what, I'm struggling with that whole God thing. I'm not even sure there is maybe a God, but you'd still come into a church means that you're open-minded, and that's an incredible attribute to have. And so I may not say anything that will convince you that there's a God, but here's what I hope that you hear. See, maybe you've been told all your life that you're supposed to believe in God. Well, here's what I want you to hear today. If you don't believe in God, we respect that. But while you might not believe in God, you need to hear this. God believes in you. God believes in you. Maybe you've been told that that's not true, that he's kind of pushed you off to the side. No, that's not true. He believes in you. He cares deeply about you. He thinks that there are things possible in your life. Now, you might walk out of this room and you still don't believe in God, but my hope is that based on the answer to this question, what does God think is possible in your life for this coming year, that you're going to think, okay, I might not be have this whole God thing figured out, but if there is a God, I sure hope it's the God who answers the question like that. Because with that answer, it will change your life if you can live in it. If you can live in it from now through December 31st. See, as some of you know, the Bible says that with God all things are possible. Right? So that's where we live. We live in the land of possibility. What's possible? I believe that. But this morning, I want to give you some specific answers to this question. I mean, really specific answers. What does God think is possible for you in this new year? Well, here's a list of what God thinks is possible. God thinks that love is possible for you. God thinks that joy is possible for you. That peace, that patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness are possible for you. God believes faithfulness is possible for you. God believes that self-control is possible for you. What's possible for you in this coming year? Here's what God thinks. Now, as you look at that list, I'm not sure what kind of emotion you have or actually what you're thinking, but maybe you're thinking something along the lines of, okay, that's cool. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but all right. No, you're missing this. You're missing this. See, this isn't just some cute little list, feel good kind of a list. This is a powerful list. This is a profound list. You see, because every single positive New Year's resolution that you could have comes out of this list. Let me explain that. See, when it comes to New Year's resolution, I mean, the kind of change that we really hope for, ultimately, it's an internal thing. It's a heart thing. The heart has to change. Because when the heart changes, everything else comes in line. For example, if the New Year's resolutions is okay, I want my financial situation to change. Get in better financial shape. Well, first of all, I just want to let you know that if that's you, if you want to step into that God has you. God has you in this, right? God believes it's possible because He believes that self-control is possible for you. He believes that patience is possible for you. So when you want to spontaneously buy things that you shouldn't buy, he goes, you know what? There's something different for you. You can live differently. God believes that that's possible. Maybe you want to be in better physical shape, right? Get healthy. Well, God believes that self-control is possible for you. God believes that discipline is possible for you. Maybe there's addiction or an appetite that's controlling you. Well, God believes you can take that control back. He believes it's possible. Or maybe for you, it's worry, anxiety, or depression, and it's just kind of holding you down and beating you up. Well, God believes that joy is possible for you, that love is possible for you, that peace is possible for you. Or maybe it's patience. You know, you look at your life, and you just react really strongly and really quickly to people around you. Maybe it's your spouse, your kids, your coworkers, it's your friends. Well, God believes that patience is possible for you. So this is some cute little list. This is a staggering, profound list of possibility that will affect and benefit the people around you. It will change you. And let me share with you why I know this is possible. See, this list actually comes from a Bible verse in the New Testament. Right, the Bible is broken up into two major sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is life before Jesus. It's Israel, the story of Israel. And then we have the New Testament, and the first four books are a biography about Jesus, and then the other books are really about the church and how the church started. And they're letters to some of these churches. And one of those letters is called the book of Galatians. And a guy by the name of Paul wrote this letter to this young, struggling church. Now we're going to look at verses 22 and 23 of chapter 5. But just before that, there's another list, right? And Paul writes this out as a list of things not to do. And this is where most of us kind of put up our hands. We say, oh, don't tell me I can't do things. And here's why he says it. He says, because these things will kill you. You do this kind of stuff, and it will destroy relationships. You do this kind of stuff, it's going to destroy your marriage. It's going to destroy your friendships. Don't do this stuff. It just kills you. But then he gives us another list. He said, but this other list, here's what I want you to embrace. In verse 22, he writes, but the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And then I love how he ends this. He says, and against these things, there's no law. There's no law. You know, that other list, it's going to kill you. Stay away from it. This list, it will bring you life. Embrace this. Embrace this. Grab hold of this. This is powerful stuff. And check this out. The reason I know this is possible in your life and mine is because God says it's possible. See, Paul describes this grouping of words as the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit. Do you know what that means? The fruit of the Spirit. I mean, very simply, the fruit of the Spirit is the product of an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. So we get close to Jesus, we come to know Jesus, we follow after Jesus, and this is the result of that. This is what happens when that happens. Actually, in John 15:5, the author of that gospel, he describes something very simple that Jesus said, similar that Jesus said. Jesus said, hey, I'm the vine and you guys are the branches. Like if you remain in me, if you stay close to me, if you're tight with me, what's going to happen is there's going to be fruit in your life. He's describing like an apple tree. Think about an apple tree, right? In the springtime, spring will come here eventually, right? There's blossoms on the tree, and then some fruit starts to form, tiny little baby fruit. But over time, that fruit grows into a beautiful apple. And what happens? What does the apple do to grow the fruit? Absolutely nothing. It just stays connected to the tree. The tree does all the work. And this is what Jesus is describing. This is what Paul is describing. This isn't about you measuring up and you performing. It's about you staying connected to Jesus. Because when you're connected to Jesus, he changes everything. And he produces this in your life. Right? It's why we're not here to lead you into a growing religion. We're here to lead you into a growing relationship, an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. See, because we believe, because Jesus promised that as you abide, as you stay connected in him, something powerful happens. And if you stay connected to him, a year from now, you'll look back on your life and you say, wow, look at the fruit. Look what he did. And it is what he did. So let's get practical. What do we do about this? So I got this idea from a pastor named Jeff Henderson at a church just outside of Atlanta called Gwinnett Church. And he's been doing this over the past few years. He selects one of the characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit. And then he focuses in on that characteristic for an entire year. And he invites some people into the process with him as well. So, for example, one year he chose the characteristic of love. He decided that he wanted to love better. He wanted to love his wife better, his children better, his friends better. He wanted to love better. But he realized he couldn't do it on his own. He couldn't change his heart. And so he invited God into that process. He invited some friends into that process. And here's what he says a year later. He says, I see what God, as I look back, I see what God has done in my heart by focusing on this one fruit. And it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, don't you want that kind of change in your life? I mean, isn't that why we're here? Because we want to be different? It starts with the heart. It starts right here, changing the heart. And listen, God says that that's possible. God says it's possible. Do you believe it's possible? So I want to put the list back up. I want to put Galatians 5:22. If we could do that, that would be great. And I want you to look at these 9 characteristics. Look at the 9. What's the one for you this year? What's the one characteristic that you need to focus on for the coming year? What's the one? This is a really important question. But here's the challenge for a lot of us. It's not that easy. It's not. It's maybe the one just doesn't pop up in front of you. You're thinking I need all 9, you know. But here's what I know about you. That there are people in your life, people who are on the other side of you, who want to help you with this. And by other side of you, I mean these are people who have perspective that we don't have. These are people outside of us. Sometimes we're so close to us, right, that we can't see what we need to change or what would be most beneficial. We don't see the potential and the possibility that others can see. And so we need to invite other people into this process because they can see what we can't see. And so to get to the one that you should focus on over the next year, here's maybe what you need to do. Number one, if you're married, you need to ask your spouse, hey, you're kind of on the other side of me. You see things I don't see. What's the one thing? And now this might happen for you. They might give you more than one. And here's what you say to them. Hey, the preacher said just one. You just settle down. All right, just one. I get just one. Give me one. Now, if you're not married, or maybe actually if you're married too, step 2 is for you as well, is to invite a few other people into this process. Ask some trusted friends. If you're in a small group, you ask your small group. In fact, if you're a part of a small group, we call them access groups around the quarry, invite those people in. And one of the homework assignments is for you to ask some people close to you and say, hey, here's 9 characteristics. What's the one that I need to work on? And you invite those people in, and they cheer you on, and they hold you accountable. But ultimately, what you need to do is you need to get alone, just you and God. You need to ask him the question. Okay, God, what do you think is possible? out of these 9 characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit, what's the one that I need to focus on this year? So you ask someone who knows you well, ask a few other people into this, and then pay attention to what comes. Because these are the people in your life who are on the other side of you, and they're saying, out of these 9, here's the one. And so as you hear that, here's the homework assignment that I have for you between now and next Sunday. And this is really simple. The first is this: you got to choose one. Just choose the one. What's your one? What's your one? And then number 2, come back next Sunday. This is part of forming some real simple habits so we affect change. So come back next Sunday. And then number 3, I want you to get it, if you're not already in a group, to get into a group of people who, and again, around the Quarry we call them access groups. And if you're not in a group, then you can go to our website and it'll give you information on how to get into a group. You can go to the information table and the person there will help you get into groups. Because we're talking about change here. Because here's the truth. If you walk through this, I mean, the benefit is you're going to end up in this really incredible place. This incredible place. And here's why. See, because this is what God believes is possible for you. And if you can get in tune with God, and if you take steps towards Him, really, you're stepping into an abundant life. A life, really, of love and joy and peace and patience. Because God thinks this is possible. And as you take steps towards Him, you step onto this different life. And His arms are open wide for you. He's saying, come. Now, you hear all this and maybe you're thinking, okay, Michael, this is great, love it. Hey, but is this just like preacher talk? Or are you actually engaging this thing as well? And that's a fair question. And I'll answer you honestly. It's interesting. When I preach, oftentimes I have people come up to me and they say, it's like you wrote this just for me. It's like you were just speaking to me today. And I want to tell you, if that ever happens, that's just God, all right? That's just straight up God. Because the reality is, when I preach, I'm preaching to me. Because I need to hear these messages every bit as much as you do. Because I'm on the same journey as you are. I mean, we might be at different places on this thing, but I'm in this thing with you. All right, so full disclosure, I have a pretty good idea of which characteristic that I'm going to focus on over the next year. Some of you know that the past 7 months have been really difficult for me and my family. I'm kind of living in this new reality, shifting, changing. But most mornings I wake up with significant anxiety, and I experience mild depression regularly. Life has been a roller coaster. But I want you to know that I'm learning how to live differently. More dependent upon God than I have ever been in my life. And I'm opening up to a few trusted friends and letting them further into my life. And in the middle of all this, God is growing me. God is changing me. You need to know, if you don't know already, that He is faithful. And He does work all things together for the good of those who love Him. It's amazing. And I love Him. What I think that God wants me to work on over the next year is peace. Is peace. It's the opposite of anxiety. He wants me to experience more of His peace. And now I haven't made that official because I need to let a few other people into this process and see what they see. But that's where I'm leaning. And here's the great news, right? If we're going to get to December 31st and grow in whatever characteristic that you choose, whatever the people in your life come around you and they say, okay, that's the one. If we're going to get to December 31st, here's what must happen. And this is an invitation, and it's an invitation to all of us, arms open wide, right? You've got to be desperate and dependent upon Jesus like never before. You need to be desperate and dependent upon Jesus like never before. Because the kind of heart change that we're talking about, it doesn't happen with wishful thinking. It doesn't happen because you're a really good person. It doesn't happen because you're really smart or you're really sharp or because you have all the resources, you have the right education. This happens because you cling to the source, because you are clinging, you are holding tight to Jesus, because you are desperate and dependent upon Him. And so let me ask just kind of a level-setting question for everyone in the room. I mean, does that kind of dependence upon Jesus mark your spiritual life? Is that a description of where you currently are? Or have you just kind of acquiesced into being really comfortable with religious motion? Just kind of showing up, all right, check the box. Read my Bible, check the box. Prayed before I ate, check the box. How desperate are you for Jesus? See, what I've realized is if I'm gonna get to December 31st and there's going to be this fruit of peace in my life, it's only going to come because I am desperate and I am fully dependent upon Jesus. He's the one who's going to make the change. See, with Jesus, all things are possible. So if you're being wrecked right now by addiction and you need self-control, Jesus says it's possible. If your relationships are being wrecked right now because you're impatient or there's hatred in your heart, then Jesus says that love is possible for you. Do you want it? If worry and anxiety and depression are just kind of holding you down and holding you under, Jesus says that there is peace, there is joy, and it's available to you. It's possible. Will you take it? Because he says, come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. He says, my peace I leave you, my peace I give you. Do you believe that? Here's the question. What does God think is possible for you in the new year? What does God think is possible? And here's the answer. He thinks love is possible, and joy is possible, and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These are all possible. So choose one. Just choose one. Right? Come back next Sunday. Share it with a group, get in a group, then share it with a group, and let's go on a journey together and see where God takes us from now through December 31st. And if none of what I said convinces you to make a move, all right, here's my last plea. I just triple dog dare you to just try it. To just try it and see what God does. And if you're here today and you say, Michael, I'm still not sure about Jesus, I get it. Just come back next Sunday. Just come back. You might not believe in Jesus, but He believes in you. He is sure about you. It's no accident that you're here today. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to invite the band up here. And that way the band is going to give us an opportunity to respond back to our great God. We're going to sing a few songs together. We're going to take an offering, and I'm going to just say something about that in just a second. And we do this because we want to honor our God, because He makes all of this possible. We live in this land of possibility because that's our God. Our God is the God of the possible. And it's only because of Him, because of His justice, His holiness, His righteousness, His love for you. His belief in you. He believes in you. And maybe in the time that we have together in these next moments, as we give you some space, maybe the Spirit of God is going to nudge you. And He's going to say, okay, the one you need is patience. Let's work on patience together this year. Or maybe He's going to nudge you and it's going to say, it's love. It's love. I want you to experience love. Or it's peace. Or it's joy. And as you step into that, and I encourage you to step into that, you're going to step into this beautiful pathway that he has for you. A path of life, abundant life, all because of the grace and the goodness of our Father. Would you join me in praying? Heavenly Father, God, we thank you. We thank you that you believe in us. We often don't believe in ourselves and what can happen, God. We get stuck in places. And God, by your mighty hand, you pull us out and you say, come. You pick us up and you wrap us in your arms and you say, I love you. I'm with you. Through all of this, through the storms and through the sunny days, I am with you. I will carry you. I have this for you. God, help us in these days to hear your voice and to know what the one is, God. And we'll look at our reality and we'll say, well, that might be today, but it doesn't define me. God, you define me. And so I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to follow you. Wherever you go, I will stay connected to you. I am desperate for you, fully dependent upon you, oh God. We love you, Lord. God, we want to worship you. We want to acknowledge you. We want to honor you. And so, God, we're going to turn our hearts and our minds to you and focus on praising you. And we're going to do that with singing. And we're going to do that with offering our treasure to you, oh God. And I just want to push pause for a second. In the midst of this prayer, God allows us to do that. And just let me tell you what I mean by offering. Some of you guys are new to this